All right, Sit, Stay, Love, Chapter 6. I'm going to try to read 6 through 6, 7, 8, and 9 on this one tape. Let's see if it works, kiddos. You can look at my ceiling in my bedroom while I'm reading. This Chapter 6 is called None of This is Fair. I thought my week couldn't get any worse, but man, was I wrong. I was sitting alone at lunch the next day when I felt a tap on my elbow. I turned around to see Eric Chung standing there with his tray. I choked on the sandwich I'd bitten into, and Eric hopefully whacked me on the back. Helpfully. Are you okay? He asked. Why was it that every time I saw Eric Chung, he was having to check to see if I needed to go to the hospital? I coughed and nodded. I had no idea why he was there when his popular friends were across the cafeteria. I tried to think of something to say. I played kickball with your sister yesterday, I finally told him. Kickball? Eric looked confused. Yeah, we have math class together. Eric still looked highly confused. Okay. We were both in the outfield because we're not that sporty. I guess you guys aren't really all that much alike. Eric laughed. You're right. We're pretty different. He paused and then added, Hey, so I just wanted to tell you, my mom and I went to the shelter yesterday and we found a dog to adopt. That's great, I started to say, and then a flash of fear went through me. I heard him continue to talk, but now his voice sounded like it was coming from far away. Yeah, we found the perfect dog. We even have a lead already on how we might be able to track down his papers. He's a pug. I guess he's really been through a lot, but the lady who worked there said you'd been nursing him back to health. Potato? Eric Chung had adopted my dog? It felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. It hurt to breathe. He was still talking, but I wasn't listening. Potato, I managed to get just the one word out. Yeah, that's the one. That's a cute name. Did you give it to him? Of course he'll need a show name, but since he seems to respond to Potato, we'll probably keep it for his nickname. They said he needed some more recovery time, but we could take him home next week. Hold on. My head was still spinning. I couldn't process this. You adopted Potato? I was standing up. For the first time in my life, I really kind of wanted to smack somebody. That's what I've been telling you. Eric sounded so calm. It made the whole thing worse somehow. He was supposed to. I was going to. But I couldn't finish the sentence. There was no getting around the fact that I was living with my allergic aunt. It didn't matter how much I wanted Potato to be my dog. But oh, how I wanted that to be true. It was silly, but I had never felt such a strong connection with the pup before. And I knew if I could, I'd give him the best home ever. And of all people to adopt him, did it have to be Eric Chung? It just wasn't fair. Potato wasn't cut out for show business. What if his dog show preparations got in the way of his recovery? Still, I knew that deep down, I couldn't deny Potato a loving home. But I wasn't going to stick around for Eric to rub in my face. Yeah, I was hoping you could help me with, Eric started to say, but I turned on my head and was already out the cafeteria doors before I could let him finish. I didn't know how substitute teacher Chip was getting away with it, but in math he announced that we weren't even bothering with the 7-minute fractions charade today. Nope, we were headed right outside for more kickball. Lily was absent that day, which left me alone in the outfield, fuming. I was relieved she wasn't there, actually, because I would certainly have spilled out all my frustrations about Eric and Potato and the dog show stuff, and she might not have taken that too kindly. Finally, the class ended, and Chip called us back inside. I pulled myself together and put on my brave face, as my aunt shows always called it. My next class was history. I sat in the back. Of course, Eric wasn't in class, just like Lily hadn't been in math. Kickball. Maybe they left early to go pick up Potato, I thought, before I realized Eric had said they were taking him home next week. I fought back another wave of sadness. I reminded myself that I was at least lucky enough to know people who were adopting him. Maybe if I could just get to know them well enough to ask for visitation rights, I'd get a chance to see my Potato. Lori had trouble meeting my eyes when I walked into Orphan Paws after school. Good news, she announced. It's the most cheerful fake voice I'd ever heard. Your little guy there's got a forever home in his future. I didn't say anything back, but bent down to get Potato out of his crate. I picked him up and took him with me into the back. I walked out the back door and sat on the little bench Bending my head down close to his, I kissed the side of his face. He responded by licking the side of mine. I know you're disappointed. Lori was standing in the doorway, this time using her real voice. Yeah, you know you're not allowed to have a dog, kid, she went on gently. Unless something's changed. If so, I'll tell the people. No, there's been a change, but not a good one. We lost the house. It got condemned. Oh, no, I'm so sorry. That's terrible. Does that mean you'll be staying with your aunt permanently then? I don't know. Maybe. I honestly had no idea, and Dad seemed so blue about the whole thing, I was afraid to even ask. Coming over to sit down beside me, Lori sighed and reached out to pet Potato. He licked her nose. I'm so sorry, Cecilia. But you know, the family does seem really nice. I looked over at her. Yeah, the boy, Eric. He told me today at school. I know the Chungs are taking Potato. I felt a spark of anger again. They want to turn him into a show dog. Did you know that? Lori nodded. Yeah, isn't that something? Potato here might go free from being left out by a dumpster to being a champion. Isn't life funny sometimes? I rolled my eyes. Hysterical. Lori patted Potato on the head again and went back inside. I turned Potato around gently so that he could see my face. You don't really want to be a show dog, do you? I could have sworn Potato shook his head back and forth. Just a little. Eric Chung has everything. Number 1, class president. Number 2, frustratingly charming. Number 3, rich. Number 4, good at sports. And now number 5, my dog. Chapter 7, another dog monster. Incoming! It was Monday, day 3 of math class kickball. I yelled to give Lily a heads up. Austin Fuller had kicked the ball incredibly hard and it was headed straight for us. We both ran away from the ball as fast as our legs would carry us, and the rest of the kids on our team all yelled angrily. Finally, Lily picked up the ball from the ground and threw it to Mehdi Banerjee, who was manning third base. Seemed like you know what you're doing there, I told her. Lily shrugged. It's progress, I guess. I just wish I could have stopped running away when a ball comes flying at my head. But I do it every time. Well, I think that sounds like a sensible thing to do, I told her. Lily grinned. It's not that I hate all sports. I really love skiing and ice skating. I just don't like anything that involves stuff flying at your head, I finished for her. Exactly, she grinned. I was surprised at how much Lily and I had bonded over the last few kickball sessions. It was hard balancing how much I'd grown to like her with the fact that her family was about to take Potato away from me. I had managed not to mention anything about it to her, though. I liked getting to know Lily, and I was worried that bringing Potato into the mix would mess things up. Chip yelled that class was over then, and we started walking back into the building. This kickball marathon's got to end eventually, right? Lily asked as we made our way off the field. I nodded, but honestly, I kind of didn't want it to. It was fun spending time with Lily. You can always just ask her to hang out after school, I could imagine Lori telling me. Maybe imaginary Lori was right, but what if asking Lily to hang out crossed some invisible social boundary? What if our maybe friendship only existed on the kickball field? Well, I guess I'll see you later, Lily's voice pierced through my thoughts. She was already turning the corner to her next class, and I had to head the other way. Okay, well, wait, I said before she could walk away. Are you doing anything after school by any chance? I volunteer at the Orphan Paws, and today I'm taking the dogs on a walk. Would you like to join? I braced myself for potential rejection. That sounds great, Lily said with a grin. I'll meet you at your locker after school. And before I could even reply, she was already bouncing away. Her brother may be a dog stealer, I couldn't help but think, but Lily's not half bad. Heel, why won't you heel, Lily shouted. I cracked up watching Peaches, Twinkie, Malamar, and Coco drag Lily around the grass. We were in the park across the street from Orphan Paws. Oreo found a forever home, but the other pups were still at the shelter. Now they were full of energy, having waited patiently all day for me to come take them out. Lily had volunteered to take the reins, which ultimately resulted in her crashed on the grass, tangled in a mess of puppies and leashes. I don't know how you do it, Lily said, slowly pulling at the leashes in an attempt to escape. We moved the tangle of puppies into the gated dog park. Then I helped Lily unclip all the pups and their leashes so they could run around. This is exhausting. You get used to it, I said, sitting down on the bench. Wait, I added, doesn't your family have a lot of dogs, like show dogs? I added silently. Lily nodded as she sat down beside me. But I kind of stay out of the way. Eric and my parents are the dog people in my family, she smiled. I mean, don't get me wrong, dogs are cute, but I think I'm more of a cat person. I laughed. Okay, I think I can accept that. We sat there for a while, watching in comfortable silence as the puppies pranced around the park, chasing one another and playing with the other dogs. After a minute, Coco ran up to me and begged to be picked up. I lifted her up and she promptly started licking my face. You're just like my brother, Lily said with a grin. He's crazy for dogs, and ever since he found a box of abandoned puppies outside a church last week and brought them to Orphan Paws, he's been obsessed with the idea of adopting a rescue dog. Our parents think that's a bad idea, but Eric won't let it go. So they eventually gave in on the condition he takes full responsibility for the pup. In fact, our family is going to adopt. Her eyes flicked down and her words trailed off. I could tell Eric had already filled her in with the relationship with their soon-to-be pup. Yeah, I heard about Potato, I said, trying and failing to suppress my immediate frown. You can still visit him, Lily said softly. Yeah, maybe, but it's not the same, I replied, wishing we'd move on to another conversation topic. I didn't want to think about Potato and his new home right now. And Eric can be super annoying sometimes, but he's good at taking care of dogs. I think you guys would get along. Doubtful, I said, standing up quickly and picking up the leashes. But I'm glad that you came today, I offered, realizing my tone may have sounded a bit harsh. Me too, Lily said. She stood up next to me, and together we gathered all the puppies and got their leashes back on. As we headed out the park, I thought about what Lily had said about Eric and how ridiculous it was. Eric might be a fellow dog monster, but that was no reason he had to take my dog. But Potato's not technically mine, a voice in my head was quick to remind me. My confused thoughts followed me all the way back to the shelter. Thanks for inviting me, Lily told me. Sure, I said, and we waved goodbye. Chapter 8. Also, I smell a wet dog. The next day at school passed in a blur. I knew I didn't have time left with Potato, so I was frantic to get back to Orphan Paws as soon as I could. The minute the final bell rang, I ran to OP, threw open the door, and with my usual gusto, leaned, panting against the doorframe. Was someone chasing you, Lori asked. No, I paused for a breath. I just like making a dramatic entrance. Lori shook her head, laughing. Well, anyway, I'm glad to see you. We've got these 2 new guys in just now. She gestured to one of the intake crates, which held 2 very dirty, medium-sized dogs. They both look like mixed terriers. I've got to go pick up some meds. Could you bathe them and do the flea dip? I nodded. Sure, whatever you need. I rolled up my sleeves and went over to the big sink to gather my supplies and prep. I glanced over at Potato, who was napping across the room, but I knew duty came first. I gave each terrier a bath, followed by the dreaded flea dip. You had to apply the solution with a sponge, just a little at a time, then towel the dog dry. The smell was pretty crummy, but hopefully it would work to get those puppies flea-free. When I finally was done, I took off the coverall I'd worn and washed my hands, then scooped up Potato. He woke up and barked happily at the sight of me. I sat on the floor with him and checked all his bandages. All his cuts had healed nicely, and he was moving better now. His ribs were probably healing, too, I thought. I nuzzled my chest against his. Well, Potato, I whispered, I know you found a forever home. They are nice people. I guess Lily is, and Mr. and Mrs. Chung. Eric maybe not so much, except they're super into show dogs. I personally don't approve. Potato, with all the right dogs that are out there in every shelter, why do people have to breed dogs? It's very irresponsible. I set him down gently and then walked a few paces away. Come, Potato. I clapped my hands and he waddled back over to me. Then he stopped and looked at me expectantly, as if he was waiting for my next command. What a cutie. Sit, I said, motioning my hand down. Potato sat. Can you shake my hand? I asked him, putting my hand out. Potato looked at my hand, tilting his head quizzically. I gently lifted his paw and shook it, showing him what I wanted. Then I let his paw go and put his hand out again. The request seemed to register in his head, and Potato quickly lifted his paw for me to shake. Good, Potato, I said, elated he'd listened to me. Potato gave a small victory bark in reply. I'm going to miss you, I whispered sadly. I heard a throat clearing behind me. You're right, he really listens to you, said a voice. I jumped a little in surprise. I never in a million years would have guessed who was standing there. Eric Chung. You scared me half to death, I told him. Sorry, just thought I'd come by and see Potato, how he's doing. There was a look on his face I couldn't quite read. I wondered how long he'd been watching me and if he had heard my rant about dog breeding. I don't think he's ready to go home with you yet, I heard myself saying, my tone harsher than I intended. I didn't stop to think, I just knew I wasn't ready to part with him yet. Eric looked down at Potato. He's a great example of his breed, build-wise. He'll be a fierce competitor in the dog show circuit. I tried to hold my tongue, but I couldn't. I don't think Potato's dog show material, I blurted out. I mean, I'm sure he'll be awesome because Potato can do anything, but he doesn't deserve to have such a high-pressure life. What if he doesn't perform up to your expectations? Will you be mean to him? Potato's been through enough, and he doesn't need any more stress. I knew I was rambling at this point, but I felt such a surge of emotion that I had to let it out. Eric looked offended. I'd never be mean to a dog, Cecilia, especially to one I'm responsible for. Well, good, I said, disappointed in myself that I couldn't come up with a better retort. An awkward pause followed. Eric still looked a little miffed, but then he moved closer to me and knelt down to scratch Potato's head. There's a good boy, he said softly. Then all of a sudden Eric got up abruptly, his nose wrinkling as if he smelled something rank. What's wrong? I asked. I thought you came to see Potato. He moved a few feet away from where he was just kneeling. Nothing, Eric said quickly. I just can't stay, but I'm glad Potato's doing well. We can't wait to bring him home in a few days. Before I knew it, Eric was out the door, and I was still sitting there confused. What was that about? I asked Potato, who stared at me. The pup seemed to be thinking hard, but had no answer. I found out the real answer a half hour later after I'd run home and slid into the spot on my aunt's dinner table. I hadn't bothered to change since Aunt Pam had announced that she had made her famous macaroni and cheese. Aunt Pam's nose wrinkled just as Eric said, What's the smell? It's probably me, I guess. I smell like wet dog. No, that's not it. I mean, yes, that too, but you've smelled like that before. Dad reached across the table to grab the bread basket. That's flea dip smell, I bet. I smacked my palm against my forehead. Oh, gosh, I totally forgot. That must be why he made the face. I smell like Prethrin. Aunt Pam was shaking her head. Run up and take a shower and put on some fresh clothes. I'll warm up your dinner. I frowned. The food did smell amazing, but Aunt Pam was right. The flea dip smell was mixing in a very unappetizing way. I ran upstairs, almost tripping in my hunger-based haste. I rushed through a very hot shower. About halfway through changing my clothes, it occurred to me that Eric Chung had caught me smelling like a wet dog. And worse, I didn't actually care what he thought about me, right? Does she care or doesn't she care? Dun, 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 dun. Chapter 9. Back to our regularly rescheduled fractions. I slammed my locker door shut, giving myself a little pep talk. It was a new day, and I was pretty sure I smelled okay. Time to focus on the positive. Even kickball wouldn't be too bad with Lily to talk to in the outfield. Ready for some kickball? Lily fell into step beside me as we walked into math class. As long as we can hide in the outfield, I told her. We took our seats but didn't get out our books, expecting the familiar call, to go outside. When Chip walked in, I noticed he had on a tie for the first time since he'd started subbing for us. He also looked a little pale. Lily tapped me on the shoulder and pointed to the doorway where the assistant principal, Mr. Danvers, was standing. Please open up your textbooks to Chapter 11, Chip said. Austin Fuller started to yell, Hey, what about kick? But the look on Chip's face silenced him right away. The rest of us shrugged and opened our books to Chapter 11. Lily and I exchanged a knowing look. I guessed that was the end of math class kickball. And then I took the world's fastest shower, 'cause, well, you know how I feel about mac and cheese. I was Skyping with Mel after school finally, and just given her the complete rundown of everything that happened with Potato, finishing off with a recap of Eric running away from the stench of my flea-dipped clothes. But even as I joked about my smelly encounter, Mel knew me too well to miss how devastated I was about losing Potato. There'll be other dogs. See, you guys get new dogs at the OP like every day. Soon enough, a new furry face will come along and you'll be in puppy love all over again. I rolled my eyes, but I couldn't help but giggle. Mel always knew how to make me laugh. How's the living situation? Mel asked. Has it gotten any better with Aunt P? It's been fine, I guess, I said with a shrug, but I do hate to mooch off my aunt. A part of me wonders if my dad insists on staying here because he doesn't have enough money to find a new place. I felt a small weight lift from my shoulders. That had been a worry I had carried for a long time, but this was the first time I had said it out loud. Before I could continue, I heard my dad bellow, Cecilia! No, I guess you have to go, Mel said. But hang in there. Things will get better, I promise. Thanks, I sighed. I hope. Talk to you soon. I shut my laptop and walked the 5 steps out to the kitchen to see what he wanted. You bellowed? Dad smiled at my word choice, but it seemed like something was bothering him. Your aunt has her book club tonight. I was going to heat up the rest of this soup she made for dinner, but I just couldn't face it. I made a face. Good. Usually everything she makes is yummy, but I don't think soup's her thing. Dad smiled again. I think you might be right. Go get your coat. Where are we going? Out for dinner. Awesome. It'd been a long time since my dad and I ate together, just the two of us. Where? Your pick, he said with a grin. I thought about it for a second. Can we go to Chili's? Sure thing, kid. He turned and led the way out. It's a cough intermission. When we got there, we ordered plates and plates of food. My dad brought out a deck of cards, and we played a card game he had taught me when I was really little. I told him about Lily and about how our substitute teacher, Chip, got busted for letting us play kickball during class. Several potato skins later, I was on a happy food coma. My happiness was cut short, however, as soon as it was time to settle the bill. I'm so sorry, I heard the waitress saying to my dad in a low voice. Your card has been declined. Do you happen to have another one you could use? Of course, my dad said, his cheeks turning beet red. Sorry about that. He dug through his wallet and passed the waitress another card. Is something wrong? I asked Dad as the waitress walked away. I already knew the answer. I had watched enough TV shows to know what it meant when a card was declined. It meant we didn't have enough money to pay for the meal. Nothing at all, sweetheart, my dad replied. There was probably just some mix-up at the bank. No need to worry. But it was clear from his expression that there was need to worry. His brow was furrowed and his shoulders slouched. The second card Dad gave the waitress thankfully went through, and soon we were on our way out. We drove home in silence, but my mind was racing. It was heartbreaking to see Dad so stressed out. I wished I could help him, and every time I tried to think of ways I could do that, I kept drawing a blank. If only loving dogs could help earn my money, I thought. Potato was due to be taken home by his new family the next day. So, as we drove back to Aunt Pam's from dinner, I begged Dad to drop me off at the shelter and let me use my key to go in and see Potato. Dad reluctantly agreed, but said he'd pick me up in an hour. At night, with nobody else around, I found myself telling Potato everything again. And just like always, he was the perfect listener. I told him about dinner with Dad and fed him the bites of cheese I'd smuggled in a napkin inside my coat pocket. I still can't believe they're going to try to turn you into a show dog, I told Potato. He was moving more easily now since his injuries were healing. He answered by rolling over on his back and wriggling a little. When I didn't pet his stomach fast enough, he even gave a tiny indignant look. As I scratched his belly, I thought about his future career. I shuddered to think of my little ugly cute man prancing around a ring, being called a stupid name, like Pinecone Happy Toes, McNally, or something. Even if I can't adopt you, I told him, I'm going to do my very best to save you from all of that. Potato's favorite foods. Number 1, chicken-flavored cookies. Number 2, hamburger grease. And number 3, cheese, preferably in small chunks. Chapter 10, Thanks for the Cactus. Potato didn't seem to mind my tears, even though some of them were landing on top of his furry head. Today was the day the Chungs were coming to get him. Lori said she was going to let me have some time alone with him since they were coming around 5 to pick him up. Someday you'll get to have a dog of your very own, Lori promised, putting her arm around me. Today she was wearing a white dress with gray French bulldogs all over it. I knew it was just my imagination, but I could have sworn the bulldogs were all staring at me with scrunchy face looks of sympathy. I don't want a dog. I want this dog, I said, sniffling and patting Potato's head. She didn't say anything else, just nodded and disappeared into the back. Potato and I were sitting on the floor as usual. I traced the little darker patches of fur above his eyes. I kissed the side of his face where the fur was the softest. Potato looked into my eyes. He knew something was wrong. How could I let him go? The bell over the front door rang. I looked up and saw Eric first. He was randomly holding a potted plant. I felt immediately embarrassed. I was sure my eyes were still puffy and red. Eric's mom was with him. She was dressed in a very expensive-looking light blue suit. She looked out of place in orphan paws. Lori came out of the back frowning. She whispered an apology to me as she took Potato from my arms and put him up one of the exam tables. My heart sank. Lori started talking to Mrs. Chung about how he'd been doing in his recovery and gave her some medicine. I stayed rooted to the floor, too miserable to move. Eric bent down and held the potted plant out to me. Without thinking, I took it from him. When I looked down, I saw it was a cactus, one of those that sort of look like they're growing a brain on the top. I looked back at him in confusion. I got it for you, he said. He wasn't quite meeting my eyes, sort of like a thank you for taking care of him and everything. I was going to get flowers, but then I remembered you said that cut flowers made you sad because they can't keep growing. I stared at him, now completely confused. When did I say that? My voice came out a little shaky. Eric stood up, still not meeting my eyes. He took the cactus, put it on the nearby exam table, and then reached out a hand and pulled me to my feet. In science class last year, I think. He remembered that? I felt my face redden. Although I didn't know why, I looked over at the cactus and back at Eric. Well, thanks, I said hollowly, as if the cactus in any way made up for him taking Potato away. My arms felt empty. I crossed them over my stomach. You can visit him, you know, Eric said, nodding toward Potato. Thanks, I said again. I was tempted to take him up on that offer right now, but I knew it would just plain be weird to go to the Chung's house for the express purpose of visiting a dog that never technically even belonged to me. I looked over and saw that Lori was putting Potato into a crate for Mrs. Chung. I almost started tearing up again. No, Mom, I'll hold him, Eric said, going to him. I picked up my cactus and held the pot against my chest, maybe for something to do. Maybe just so I wouldn't be standing there holding nothing. Eric turned toward me, Potato in his arms. The little guy seemed happy enough. There. Do you want to say? I didn't let him finish the sentence. I shook my head quickly, murmured that I had to go, and ran to the back, still holding my cactus. I didn't want Eric or his mom to see me cry. I heard the front door bell chime again. And then, a second later, I heard one sad cry from Potato when he realized he was going and I was staying. Where have you been? Dad asked when he saw me walk into the living room at Aunt Pam's. I told you yesterday I was going to the shelter, I said, maybe a little meaner than I should have. Dad blinked and I immediately felt bad. Things were awkward between us since the dinner at Chili's, and I promised myself I'd try my best to not make him feel any worse about the money living situation, or feel worse about anything, really. I'm sorry, I said quickly. I didn't mean to sound like that. What happened? This dog, it doesn't matter. I knew it was no use burdening him with my drama, knowing all the other stuff he has to deal with. I know how important the shelter is to you, hon, Dad said softly. I just don't want you missing out on spending time with kids your own age. I sat down on the couch across from him. First Lori, then Mel, now Dad. Everyone seemed to have an opinion on my dog-loving, human-resisting ways. I know, I sighed. Lori and Mel said the same thing. I'll try to work on it. And really, I would try, I decided, now that there was no Potato to visit every single day. My schedule felt more open. All right, Dad, conceded as he heaved himself out of the chair. Say, what's with the cactus? I looked down, surprised to realize I was still clutching Eric Chung's gilt cactus. A boy gave it to me. A boy? Dad's eyebrows went up. It's not like that, I protested, hating that I was blushing again. Trust me, I don't even like him. He's just someone who adopted the dog that... I trailed off, worried that if I went into more details, I'd start crying. Anyway, it doesn't matter. If you say so, Dad said, giving me a look. He went upstairs to take a shower, and I went to my room to do my homework. I put my earphones in, trying to distract myself from remembering Potato's last sad little cry, and also from wondering about the cactus and the boy who'd given it to me.